This is an unboxing of a Haynes 4-cylinder engine model, and it may seem unusual that we're doing an unboxing of a model and not putting it together, but the plan is I'm going to be taking this to see my grandsons this weekend and putting it together with them, and hopefully I can get some good videos, pictures of that while we're doing it. But I wanted to unbox it so I could see if there's anything else that I needed. So let's open this up. Got a piece of tape right here, and just going to open this way. More tape. There it is. Okay, I'm going to turn a little bit this way so I can get to the box and still be taping. So everything is clear, so when you begin to build the engine, you'll be able to see through it to see the operations. And so I'll need to take my X-Acto knife with me in order to clean those edges that come apart. I don't know if it the oil pan there, and this is part of the block, and this appears to be the cylinder walls, the main part of the engine block. That looks like the head or the upper side of the engine. And here are the miscellaneous parts. Looks like pistons in there, looks like a flywheel. Looks like some camshaft seats right there. It'd be part of the, actually that might be the bottom of the upper portion of the block. There's the bottom portion. There's, you see the head gasket is white, and that's the top of the cylinders, the ports, and just had to find out what that's probably part of the lower portion of the engine where the camshaft is located, and that may actually be the valve cover right there. Looks like we have timing belts and probably a fan belt there. And here we have the exhaust manifolds, the front water pump, and alternator looks like there. And there's our camshaft. Looks like we've got a little screwdriver in there. Components for the electrical. This is probably the alternator here, where they're hiding they're coming in with a different power source to turn the engine. This could be a small motor. Yeah, it is. That's a small motor in there. You can barely see it there, but there's right there to turn it. And there's our fan, and this is our oil pan here that the engine sits on, and there's also this fan. So it looks like everything's here, and this was actually probably the top of the box that we opened the bottom. Instruction manual for construction. Yeah, there we go. that you just saw was where I ended putting together the engine, probably about 80–90% what you see it now. And we ran into some problems. Now, all in all, I think this is a great model. And my grandsons are 13 and 14. It says 14 and up. And both of them understood what was happening as we were putting it together. We had a great time doing it. Both of them were engaged, so we had a great time. I have noticed, though, there are two particular problems with the model itself. The first one is you have to read these instructions. You need to read these instructions very well. I read them sufficiently well, so I thought, but I missed a part that went into the engine that I didn't notice until I got to this point. I thought there's a problem here. I don't understand how this thing is being connected together, especially where it comes to the valve stem seals. And anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But it's there. It's in the instructions. But if you don't notice just a couple little notes in the instructions, you'll miss it, and it'll make it, and the engine won't come together. Another thing, though, that was actually my fault. It was not really the instructions fault. Now, the one thing that I have noticed about the instructions and the model itself is it's not real clear when you're looking at each of the part, which part is the front of the engine. So essentially, we got to this point in the assembly of the engine, and I was going to put on the front cover. And when I did, when I went to put the front cover on, I realized it wasn't matching up. Now, where it should match up, I mean, it does, but it didn't match up for me to be able to bolt it together because these pins here were in the wrong place, which meant that this, if you look at it, this top portion with these are wrong. This should be the front, and this should be the back. And then when you get to down here, we've got, again, this is supposed to be the rear, and this is supposed to be the front right here. And so what I'm going to do is I've made me some labels, and basically I'm going to label the fronts. You can do what I'm doing, either making labels, or you can just make a scribe on the pieces as you go to show the front and the back. This is the front of top of the head, and what you'll notice is these stems here are further apart, and you can check it with the cover plate and see that the screw pattern is correct when compared to the screw pattern is correct when you compare it. So that is the front, and I have it on the back, so I have to get that one turned around. This one is okay, I believe, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to look, because I've noted inside the instructions where the fronts are on all these components. And let's start at the bottom. The very bottom is the oil pan. This oil pan, and I actually have this backwards. The oil pan, this is actually the front, and this is the back. So I want to put the front on that piece right there. So I know that this is the front because the instruction shows that the pins, or the little legs it stands on, are set back further on the front than they are on the back. Okay, so now we have the front of the base, we have the front of the oil pan, now we get to the bottom end of the engine block. Bottom end of the engine block, and we find that again, the way I have it is not correct because these pins here aren't right. Instead, if we go over to this side, we see that again the pattern for these two stubs here match where the screws go through there. So this is the front of the bottom, the lower block, and which actually those two are all on the same. So we actually have those two pieces are by chance in the right location, except what we see is that the crankshaft is actually in backwards, right? Because we have the crankshaft coming out the front or out the back, and it should be coming out the front of this lower portion. So that we're going to have to change. The front in the picture, right here shows this stub on the front, shows this stub right here, this stub right here, stud right here on the front of the engine. So this top part, this is the front. So we're going to mark that as the front. This is, like I said, this is probably one of the things in this whole kit. Now, if you're reading the directions real slow, going through it, they do tell you what end to hold and do what with, so you kind of see where the front's supposed to be, but they don't actually call it out as the front, and it's still easy to miss. And in the illustration here, that it is smooth on the front, there is no stud, whereas on the back, on one side, there is a stud. So actually, this is the front of the head. Lower portion of the head. The top valve cover, there's really only one way for it to go on, the way it's made, but I'm going to go ahead and identify this as the front as well, because it goes, it'll match up with this side. Before you actually start building your model, go ahead and open your, this is found on page 22 in the instructions, but go ahead and remove the screw there and put in a couple of AA batteries. And let me give you a notice on a couple of things you really should do. It says on page 3 of the instructions, only remove those parts that you need as you need them from the carriers, the part carriers. In other words, the plastic things that are the carriers. Now, for the most part, it doesn't matter because most of the parts are duplicate, but I will tell you this, when you get to the camshaft instructions, each of those little cams are different. Neither one of them are the same, and all of them have to be put on in the same order. Now, when I realized this, my boys had already taken all these little cams off, but the good thing is those little numbers, those part numbers, or letters rather, A through H, they are inscribed on the parts. They're just real small, so you'll definitely need your reading glasses if you're like me to be able to see those parts again. But we did get them back together, and I'm not really planning on taking apart the camshaft because we have it set correctly. Then also there are parts like the down here on the crankshaft where the pistons are connecting rods to the camshaft there, and also up here with at the bearing points. They suggest you use vegetable oil just to put a little bit. Now, what I've done is I put a little bit of vegetable oil in one of these little cups, and I've got a Q-tip. You're not going to need much. You don't want to douse these things. You just want a little bit. Definitely do not use motor oil because that will damage the plastic parts. One of the things that is nice about this model is that all the screws are the same size, so you don't have to worry about having a bunch of different size screws in the project. So they're all the same, and they give you a screwdriver, this little one. And now you probably think, oh, I've got a better one in my tool drawer, which believe me, I do too. But you don't want to tighten these things down too tight. So this small screwdriver, while it might not be as good as what you have, because it's small, it keeps you from torquing it down too tight and stripping it out when you're putting them in. So we're going to start putting this back together again. And again, I have these three here, the base, the oil pan, and the bottom of the block, the front pieces all lined up. I've got the bottom side of the engine. Now what I want to do first is I'm actually going to take this part here, take this out here. These don't really slide real good, so I want to clean them up. So rather than trying to scrape things off, I'm going to actually hit them with this sanding block here. This is the rear of the crankshaft. Go out the back side, and again, there's our front. And we will line these up. And then all we have to do is put this back on here, lining it up again, just to make sure we've got everything going in the right direction. We have the studs that are lining up with the little lobes there. Okay, and we're going to screw it back together. I'll show you this. This is the other thing that I saw that is spelled out in the instructions to do this, but there's nowhere in here. I mean, there's a vague arrow here, but other than that, you can't tell what you'll miss this piece, and it's a critical piece. There's like the top, as it were, or they go down into this, the cylinder head. And these pieces go into it, and essentially these are the valve seals and the guides. And without those, the valves just drop through. So this one is the smallest of the two, and it will go to the it'll go on the side of the intake manifold. So it goes down into here. Push it into place. Okay, so it goes this way with the guides actually going down into the top head, and they slide in here like this, and it should pop into place. You can actually see that it has a little nib on the end there, and it goes down, and you just press it back, press this down into it. Now we're going to take the exhaust, which is wider, and then press it into place. And now you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but it actually, if you look through the hole, you can see where the valve will seat down in the bottom and the stem will come through the top. Now what we're going to do is start putting our valves in. Now here's again where we need to actually put some lubricant, as it were. So we're going to take a little bit of the oil, put it on this Q-tip, and I'm just going to dab it on the edge right there. Now the valves, here are the valves. The instructions have it pretty clear. So you have the smaller hole, which is for the smaller intake valve, and then the larger hole is for the larger exhaust valve. And so you have these, which are the actual valve itself, and then the stem, which is separate. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put the valve stem down through the hole and then push the end of the valve onto it. So we're going to start with this one. You put the little spring. Now these springs are actually on one of these rods when it comes packed. And so we're going to put this valve down into here. It's an exhaust. And so we're going to take one of the larger valve ends on it. See, this is where a 14-year-old hand would come in handy. And there we go. And you push it on. And now the valve, the spring actually, see, like that. And anyway, and then for intake, we're going to put one of the smaller ones on the other side. And now we have an intake and exhaust. Now we have all of our valves in. Great. The lower portion of the head, and again we're going to line up the front side with the front and screw it together. Oh, we almost forgot. I like this about this. We actually have a head gasket in here that we need to put on. That's all together. Putting this camshaft together, I am going to have to take it apart briefly for one thing. Okay, so they go from actually A starting in the back, working itself to the front, H being the last one. These are all correct as far as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. However, when I was reading the instruction, there's a little rib right there on the side of the cam. Little rib right there. Anyway, all of them have to be on that side. You see, I thought they were supposed to go joining each other. So I'm going to have to take them each off. So I need to make sure they're in order as they come off, but I'm going to turn them facing the right direction. Going to this, the rib on that side. Now there is a flat side on this shaft right here, and you'll notice that there's a flat inside the hole as well. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and just take that off for now. Okay, so we've got A, H, the last one. Okay, so this is going to go this way. We have to spread them apart, so we get two over here, two there, two there, two here, and then two here. Okay, now we have our camshaft up here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to drop this on here, make sure that it works. So we're going to make sure that the rocker arms are over the valve. You see on top of the valve right there. Now we're going to screw this on. There we go. And back with the valve cover, and that again, line up the front with the front. Now we need the crankshaft sprocket is there. And we'll put this one here. And this nifty little jig that we put on here. Basically, you're going to put these, slide these into these holes, and then it's going to go into hole down here. There it is right there. Okay, press that in, it holds pretty good. And we have, we'll put our timing belt on. Need to press this over the side. All right, now that. We want to put our front cover plate on. Now that we have all of our fronts off, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and take these front stickers off. Put the front cover plate back on. Now we need to get the water pump. We have chrome parts in here. Okay, so this is two pieces that go together, but you have two pieces go together, but they smoke down into those little holes. Those holes go on those posts right there. And this way, we'll be putting our screws down into it. Okay, so now we're going to put the top pulley on, fan belt pulley, and I'm going to slide that over the end here, and we're actually going to use one of the little washers and put the screw on the washer. That allows that to screw. Spin freely. And then we're going to take put our fan on. So on that one we have a little washer, another one we're going to put there. Okay, so there's a little, right there, there's a keyway there. That has to line up with that keyway there. So this one goes in like this. It actually looks like it's backwards, but it goes on here, and the keyway fits right there. And then we're going to put our screw there. take our fan belt. You see it actually is shaped like a fan belt, sort of a keystone section. There we go. Looking nice, isn't it? Okay, the distributor goes on the back with the wires coming out the top, and this goes into the right here, and it should line up with the so we're going to put our screws through these slots because there's timing involved. Okay, so what they're not telling you here is, and this is really kind of hard to believe they're not, but there's a power cord coming off the back. See the little, looks like a music earpiece jack, and that has to plug in somewhere for the power, and it should plug into the back of the engine, or into the back here of the base. And I don't think it'll go, it must go in this way, but it doesn't say that. So this actually is something new. It plugs into the back of there, and now we have our spark plugs, our spark plug wires, and they're numbered back here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what we want to do is find the fourth one, which would be this one. This one is connected to this light right here. Fourth one. And this one will go into, this one goes here. So what we want to do is press the red button. Of course, there's no red button. It must be this one here. And press the red button, but there's no red button. There it goes. There it is, right there. All right, see? And we got it right there. All right. So we're going to tighten these. That's our timing. Oops. One more time. Okay. So this goes into the, all right. This will go into the fourth cylinder, which is actually the one closest to the front of the engine. We're going to go right in here. It sort of pushes in there. And it leaves us with one that will go into our first cylinder here. Now we're going to put our motor, take our motor out. This is going to go on the back, which is going to turn. And here again they tell you that they show you where it's at, but they don't say anything about plugging it into the back, which we know now we have to. So what they don't show you also is we have a flywheel. This one right here. We kind of got lazy here at the end, and we're going to put our flywheel right here. I mean, it does show you an illustration, but it doesn't tell you where it's at or anything. But right there, onto that. And then we have our motor. All right, so here we go. Take it this way, and these actually go to the side. So these are the screw holes here, 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 and here. And so the little gear there will go to the bottom side, and that right there goes into the middle of the flywheel and holds it into place, like that. And so now we will screw that together. This one plug right back here into the back, cover the motor, which I guess is supposed to be like the transmission bell, kind of like the transmission bell sitting on the back. All right, now we have our manifolds. And the one, there's two. This will be your intake because it has where the carburetor sits on top of it. This will be our exhaust. And the exhaust goes onto the sides where the spark plugs are, according to the diagram. There we go. And like usual, yep. Spark plugs go in on that side because you always burn your hands on the exhaust manifold when you're taking it off. So what we want to do first is put the carburetor parts here, basically aesthetic pieces. And the bottom, and they made up like this. That, and then we're going to put it with a square going to the outside. It actually has a hole. This is going to fit in right there. See, right there, like that. And then I'm going to screw those together. Just come over here to the exhaust manifold side, or the intake manifold side, and pop it in just like we did on the other side. And there we have it. Everything. Now they say now, actually here it is, the last thing in the instruction, plug the exhaust manifold, the spark plug and the engine into the back, but you need that to be plugged in order for us to do the timing up here. So now we're going to press the engine and see. There we go. You can see the valves going up and down, the pistons going up and down. There we go. And the spark plugs firing. That's pretty cool. And I think it says it runs for about 45 seconds. We actually have one more thing to put on, the dipstick. Can't forget the dipstick. That's this little thing here. And all we do is poke that down in the little hole there. There you go. The dipstick's in and our engine is finished. So I'm going to box this little baby up and send it to my boys. See how they help get it started and get working on it. And it comes with some extra screws in case they need to take something apart and they lose a screw. I'll put that in the box along with the screwdriver, and they'll have a great time. That's more car stuff. Thanks for joining me for the assembly of this Haynes 4-cylinder engine. It's a great one.